needs, you can, oh, thank you, Anne. You can put in a request or just email us and we can let you know if that exists and how to access it and what to do with it. We also do some training and development, our CPAR data and research series for community impact, where we try to get people access to the newest data. We've had a lot of delays in data this year, but there's going to be a flurry of them coming out towards the end of January. So if you follow us on LinkedIn or check out our website, we'll make sure you have those resources. In addition to being the state data center, and through that work, we have developed a lot of skill set with working with large data sets and helping interpret those for folks. So we work a lot with the state legislature, as well as take grants and contracts with all sorts of government and nonprofit agencies. And what we try to do is make really complex data seem really easy and accessible so that folks know what to do with it. We don't normally tell people what to do with it, but we want to make it really easy to figure it out. So we are excited to be working with NAM on this economic impact of nonprofits in Nebraska. We used mainly the IRS 990 data, and unlike other folks that might do this report, we didn't use summaries of the 990 data. We downloaded that 990 data. For every 990 in Nebraska, we actually have a lot of 990s for other states as well, and for multiple years. And so truly, as you all as executives, if there's something you want to know that's out of that 990 data that you don't see here, one, I'd really like that feedback. Maybe it belongs here and we might still have some time to do that. But that could be something we do iteratively with you all, that there is some data you all want that hasn't been made accessible, because it's not easy to work with. Like, if you're not downloading it, I understand why. So one more thing before I jump into some of the findings. And like I said, this is a work in progress, so feedback is great. But hopefully quick feedback so that we can get it done soon. Economic impact analyses are sort of ubiquitous. Like, everybody's saying, for every $1 spent, we return 600 and, $9 billion in economic impact. I don't like that type of analysis. I understand why it's done, and basically because you can buy and plan, enter six numbers, and it sticks out a number. I don't think it helps people to understand what it means in a realistic way. So we really take a much more nuanced view of economic impact and try to really describe it in a variety of ways. In a lot of ways, that makes it harder to explain, share. There's not just like one number that's like one and done and the point is made. But I think what it does give you, this report, everyone's going to focus on a different number, and policymakers or your board or the people that work for you, they're all going to want different types of information. And so deep in here somewhere is the information you probably need to be a great advocate for your organization or for nonprofits broadly. Doesn't make it totally easy, but I do think it becomes a more valuable, more long-lasting resource, and that's what we try to be. So here's what she looks like. A wonderful team that worked on it, sponsored by, and we have others to add. Quick overview. I won't touch on the executive summary since we're going to dig in. So as I said, we don't take a one-size-fits-all approach. We have sort of a framework for understanding the economic impact. We want to find out how many nonprofits there are, what they look like, what they do, where they are. Then we look at revenue and expenses, money in, money out. That's the one that a lot of folks are going to find really important. Nonprofit employment. Our employment story is a really valuable story, and for a couple of different reasons that we'll talk about. And then, right, like, thinking about nonprofits, you are serving a clear and needed purpose. That's why you have revenue. And so to say you have an economic impact without saying you have a value to this community beyond those numbers, I just think would be a miss. So we took that approach. And so there's numbers associated with each of these. Nonprofit profile. We just wanted to help people understand like what it is. Like even as we were getting into those 990s, there's some over here and there's some over here. And why is that that? And why is that that? So we talk about the legal basis, both at the federal and Nebraska level, the categories, the purpose, tax exempt status, oversight, and reporting. Um, just a sort of clarity. This is the one and the numbers that year to year and in different reports, or if you go on another website like a Charity Navigator or something, you're going to see all sorts of different numbers. And it's because 501(c)s and 501(c)(3)s and public charities and easy filers, there are all of these different classifications. And it took us a minute to find ways to just like make this as easy as possible. But please understand that you're going to see different numbers. There was also a big update by the IRS in 2020 to remove duplicates. There had been a lot of duplicate nonprofit filings. Like, so let's say an easy filer had now started doing a 990. And I assume you all know these terms because you do this. But stop me if you don't. Right, like an easy filer now became a 990 file. They might still be on the easy file list, even though they didn't easy file in 2023 or something like that. So in 2020, they cleaned up a lot of the duplicates. So you see the numbers really come down. There's also, right, a lot of them are reported at the 501(c) level, which includes the charitable organizations, the 501(c)(3)s, but the non-charitable, the public, the professional associations, the labor unions, membership clubs, things like that. So sometimes you have to be careful which of those numbers you're looking at. And then there are 501(c)(3)s that are easy filers, 990s, private foundations, and then there are some that don't file. They're either too small, they haven't been incorporated yet, there can be reasons why, even though they're a 501(c)(3), they don't file. And so we don't have access to those numbers because we use the 990 data set to do that. So here's the numbers we get. We have about 5,483 501(c)s. 3,663 of those are 501(c)(3)s, the public charities that then become the focus of this report. And then those can be broken down into three categories. 2,980 or 81% of the 501(c)(3)s are public charities. Those are the ones that most of you are with. 501(c)(3) public charities, easy filers. These are very small. And then the 683, the private foundations, which some of you are on today. So this is the box that we really focus on. I will tell you that if you go on, and we did, national sources can say 14,000, some say 9,000. Again, that's that difference in how and where you count from, as well as some of those organizations not necessarily filing the 990s. We want to be clear, we are only reporting for those that submit a 990 in any of these categories. Nonprofits are also designated by primary area of service. Human services is the percent of nonprofits in Nebraska by their primary area of service. 32% are human services, 25 are public and societal benefit, 13 are education, 11 are health, 8 are arts, culture, and humanities, 5 are religion, 4 are environmental and animals, 1% international and foreign affairs, 1% unknown and unclassified. Those are easy filers that got away with not filling everything out. Here is our distribution across the state, obviously larger and more populous areas, but really clear that there is a statewide presence of nonprofits for sure. I think there's only one county two counties that don't have any nonprofits registered in that county. Doesn't mean that they're not being served by nonprofits, of course. So another important thing to point out. Nonprofit revenue and expenses. So this is the one that a lot of folks are interested in, and I have some overtime analysis of this at the end as well that I think is really interesting. $23.1 billion in revenue generated by nonprofits. That's folks giving you money. And I don't think there's any more clear statement of your value than folks giving you money. This is from the 990s 2023, and that is the most recent that we can have everything. We did pull some of the 2024, and there's even some 2025 like early filing situations, but we don't have any confidence that they're a full data set. So 23.1 billion. I think that is a really, really clear sentiment, right? That folks want you. 19.5 of that in public charities, 3.5 billion in private foundations, and 73.2 million in easy filers. About 26% of that, 23.1, comes from contributions, gifts, and grants. Another big one, and this is actually, if you look at this number in other states, a lot of time program service revenue is the largest. But I have seen well over 60% coming from program service revenue. So I really think it's interesting that such a large percent of ours comes from the contributions, gifts, and grants. Again, that's the public saying you add value and we value you. So I think that percentage is very strong. 58 from program service revenue. This is largely in the health services area, and I can break that down for you. And then 3% from other program revenue, charges and fees and things like that that might be associated with some. These are medians. I don't think we have to go into that now. This is expenses, and I tried to do something a little different here. So 23 billion revenue, 20 billion in expenses. That totally makes sense. You all know you have to spend the money that you make. You don't get to have huge savings accounts, a little bit of savings accounts, but those numbers worked out as we would expect. I was trying to put what is that, what can we compare that to say, what is our contribution to a broader economy? So industries, they're sort of the money they generate is reported as a percentage of the gross domestic product, GDP. Nonprofits are not listed as part of the GDP. And I understand that, right? It's not an industry, it's not a profit making, it's not importing or exporting goods, which is what GDP is trying to measure. But what is 20 billion in expenses similar to when we look at GDP? The nonprofit sector's direct spending rivals that of the manufacturing industry in Nebraska. Their contribution to GDP is 20.2 billion. So manufacturing and nonprofits in Nebraska are spending about the same amount of money. Or they're not really spending, but their size in the economy is very similar and exceeds that of agriculture, which is only 9.7 billion, which everybody thinks is a lot more than it is, but it's not. So I thought that was a really interesting way to sort of think about a nonprofit, right? If you were to pull out $20 billion from this economy, right? Nonprofits go away. That would be like losing all manufacturing in the state. That is a fair comparison. Median expenses by nonprofit type. So the median, we're just trying to get a sense of across all of those nonprofits, those 3,000 something nonprofits that we have, about how much are each of them spending. So just a little context. Public charities are spending about 426,900 a year. Easy filers are spending about 66,014 a year, and private foundations are spending about 71,845 a year. Now, again, it's a median, which means we have a lot more and a lot less. But just to give some context, what that looks like per nonprofit. Okay. During the process of putting this report together, Anne sent me a report that the Platt Institute had done suggesting that nonprofits don't pay taxes. It didn't quite say that, but there is an assumption, right? Because they are tax exempt, that they don't pay taxes. And that, as you all know, is not true. So I wanted to just put this together to explain what taxes nonprofits do pay versus what taxes nonprofits don't pay and how that compares with other states, right? Like, are we on our own when we do this, or do other states do it similarly? So state income tax, you are you do not pay federal income tax. That's what the 990 is saying you do. And that's why there are some nonprofits that are still paying some income tax, and that's why they're not filing 990s and things like that. Exempt on mission-related revenue, tax applies only to unrelated business income. Do any of you have business income? I'm just sort of interested. Okay. So healthcare ones can pretty easily. A lot can. Um, but I'm just wondering. Okay, so state income tax, you're not paying. That's consistent with most states. That's sort of just that federal rule. Most states adopted it. Sales tax on purchases, required on taxable purchases with limited exemptions. Anybody buy anything this week that they paid sales tax on? Yeah, right. You do all the time, don't you? Right? There are some exemptions, especially healthcare again, but not all the time. Consistent with most nearby states, I would say Iowa and Missouri, all nonprofit. Oh, no, sorry. Several nearby states, including South Dakota and Iowa, exempt all nonprofit purchases. So there are states very nearby that are not paying sales tax. So like us, right, we at the University of Nebraska can go into Walmart and say, hey, we need to buy this pen, but we're not going to pay sales tax on it. In many states, all nonprofits are exempt. We are not. So you're actually paying sales tax that other states don't pay. Sales tax on items sold, required to collect on sales with limited exceptions. We have carve outs for a lot of educational expenses, a lot of religious expenses, and then zoo and museum expenses. Very good lobbies we have for our zoo. There are usually carve outs. There's like a whole list. You can go online. What people don't do is put a really clear number on what those exemptions actually cost. So we really don't know. And those carve outs do tend to be very specific and strange. And like, if you know the backstory of lobbying, you know why that got carved out, but it's not always very clear to everyone else. Again, that happens everywhere, consistent with most nearby states, Iowa and Missouri, which exempt all nonprofit sales. Okay, so now every, you know, so the zoo has a carve out. Not all museums have a carve out. Go to Iowa, all museums have a carve out. Um, sorry, I'm struggling. I'm really interested in the questions, but I can't like do both. So I'll get a little bit farther and then we'll check in and then um, we can keep going. Employee income tax withholding. This is the one where you should be like, we are making a giant contribution to this economy. Do you take taxes out of what you pay your employees? Yes, every one of you do. And that is a huge portion of the revenue to the state. This section is really about like, how does the state get revenue out of nonprofits if you're tax exempt? Well, every one of your employees is paying taxes, and then every one of your employees, right, just because they're a nonprofit employee, when they go out and spend, they are paying taxes. So there is a huge chunk of revenue contribution there. Property taxes, there's some exemptions, not actually a lot. Most of you do pay property taxes on your buildings if you own them. Yeah. So again, I can't put numbers on this. Wish we could. If anyone could get the state to have better data systems, it would be a joy. They do not. The tax expenditure report from the state for 2024 provides some context, and they actually pull from somewhere else. It's not even their counting. But they say churches, nonprofit colleges, and medical facilities were exempt from approximately 212.9 million in sales tax on purchases. Report includes about 2.3 million in sales tax not imposed on memberships or admissions to zoos and aquariums. So not actually huge. is kind of what I would take away, but that's not everything. But again, what I think this does for you, if you're out talking to folks and someone was like, "Ugh, nonprofits don't contribute to the bottom line of this state," not true. And I think your biggest one is in this employment and wages. So let me stop and uh 2023, the data. All data is old. Don't get so worked up about it. If things changed a lot year to year, I'd let you know, but they really don't. Census data is behind, everything's behind. It doesn't, when you're trying to report the 5,633 501(c)s or something like that, that number is going to change, but like 20 to 21 billion, what's the difference? Great on the comparable size. I think that was an important add too. And now I can't see this last comment. Thinking about a carve out for nonprofits in Nebraska. Joe, what do you mean by that?
I'm just intrigued, and it
Okay.
feels like there's an opportunity for the nonprofits and working with NAM to think about a bill that could be supportive of nonprofits, and at least in the sales tax realm.
I
So it just
think
got my policy brain thinking, and
I
happy to
love it.
speak with others about partnering with Anne. Uh,
Yeah, and we put that the regional comparisons too, so you could go see what other people are doing. Um, yeah. Obviously it's going to be a weird time for any
Maybe not this
policy
year when there's a budget
planning.
shortfall, but maybe in 27, that's something to think about.
Well,
Right. And when
yeah,
you have that some do and some don't, it's something to talk about.
yeah. Let me jump in. This is something we've talked about at NAM. And I do think in this environment it would be challenging. But at a minimum, if we look at that this year, get people engaged, and worst case scenario, will increase awareness
Yeah.
on the power of nonprofits and what we do. I wish that we could break out at the Department of Revenue how much nonprofits versus for-profits pay in sales tax. I mean, but that's their data systems, which I don't anticipate changing. And I'm the one that put the comment about data being 2 years old. And while I know it's not as big of a deal as it relates to this, my frustration comes to is there's not one place in the federal government for nonprofits. There is no small business administration. It's different from state to state. And while I know the National Council has been working on that, Joe and others, Matt and I have been talking about like what is an overarching issue that NAM can get our arms wrapped around, to do this. And then the last thing I'll say is, oh yeah, and you'll get the report. We have some tweaking to do, and then we will email out the report and it'll be on our website. So sorry, I just saw that pop up. This data was helpful a couple years ago with all the ARPA funds. And we were invited to testify on how it should be spent. And we went down with 5 or 6 of our members, food bank and others to talk about how it should be spent. And before we got a chance to talk, then Senator McDonald got up there and was talking about nonprofits. And he said, did you know over 90,000 people work for a 501(c)(3)? And I'm like, he doesn't know where he heard it, but he heard it. And that's all that matters. And now I think, what, we're up to 100,000, Josie? So yay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We are about 100,000 individuals. This is the employment and wages section. I think this is a good segue in. So 10% of Nebraskans work for a nonprofit. 64% are for a private profit company, 10% for nonprofit. So it's like the second largest class of worker grouping. That's what they call this. 8% local government, 7% self-employed and not incorporated businesses, 5% in own incorporated businesses, 5% in state government, double what state government is, and 2% in federal government. And about 73% of those are employed full time. So you're offering good jobs. And that term, if you're playing in the workforce space the way we are lately, good jobs. They're good jobs. I'll show you that in another way too. Compares well nationally. So it's 10.3%. Iowa's only 9.3. Kansas is 9.1. South Dakota is higher. I thought that was kind of interesting. much higher than some of our Western peers, our Southern peers. And so there's a real solid foundation of this work being done. And again, that is where people are getting paid. And right, that's the money in, money out story. That's the economic story. You are hiring workers to do something of value. They are getting resources to do that work. Then they're spending those resources out, not just to do work, but to actually have a great big value. And then they're contributing to the economy through their own spending. And that's a lot of people in a state that doesn't have a lot of people. We average about 27 employees per nonprofit organization. That's just taking the number of employed and the number of nonprofits that we have. That number seemed to make sense to me overall. We're actually going to remove that section. Folks make good wages in here. So median earnings for all nonprofit employees for the state, 6,000. For Douglas County, it's about 51,000. Lancaster County, 40,000. Sarpy County, 60,000. Full-time employees a little bit higher, but following that trend. When we compare that for median earnings for all employed, higher in Nebraska, higher median earnings for nonprofit employees than anyone employed in Nebraska, in Douglas County, in Lancaster County, and in Sarpy County. So nonprofit employees at the median earn more compared to all employees. That's you provide jobs, right? You're not providing jobs, just huge economic impact.
I think
Am
you're
I
breaking up a
frozen?
little bit. Yeah, it's really
Am
hard
I
to hear you,
back?
Josie.
Was I frozen?
Well, you were just hard to hear.
I'm so sorry. Okay, I just switched to Google Fiber and it is actually really low, which I'm surprised because I switched to Google Fiber. It's supposed to be better. I'll try to finish up quick and I apologize, but hopefully in the recording it looks okay. Or you can turn the volume up really loud. Here's that median earnings compared to the region. Again, we are providing good jobs, strong median earnings compared to the region. Jumping into community value, folks value you. They are using you. Nebraskans are very service oriented. We volunteer at high rates compared to the United States, and often. And like I said, earlier I mentioned that a lot of the revenue for most of these nonprofits is coming from total contributions, gifts, and grants. And that is a really important indicator to folks that, hey, we want your revenue. So think about it this way. This is what I would tell people. If we didn't exist, that money doesn't exist, right? It's not like if I want to buy a good, if I don't buy it at Walmart, I can buy it at Amazon. If I want to adopt a puppy, right, there isn't a replacement for that for most nonprofit organizations, right? And so they are contributing because you are providing the thing they want to contribute to. And so I think that's the most clear sort of indicator. That's money that wouldn't be in the economy without you. There are replacement goods and services. There are not replacement nonprofits. You're doing something people value and can only get from you. And so you can see that here in sort of the amount of funding that's coming from folks into these different service areas overall, and especially from contributions, gifts, and grants. Quick comment on some of this over time. Nonprofit presence has stayed very consistent over time, just going up a little bit year to year, largely, and in the sort of the same areas. That says, especially through COVID, you remained in place. The percent of the workforce has remained consistently in place. And the overall revenue has consistently increased. So the overall numbers have consistently increased. They kind of flattened out for a minute between 2021 and 2022, sort of after that ARPA bump. Um, but actually, you see the private foundations really coming up during that time to sort of keep it pretty stable and pretty flat. So, right, there was a clarity that nonprofits were more important than ever, and there was a contribution there, even though a lot of people were worried about their funding. And I think that again speaks to without nonprofits, that's funding that's not circulating in this economy. I just feel really clear about that. So that is the majority of the report. Like I said, I'm really open to comments, questions, feedback, things you think could be even more strongly highlighted or numbers you would be interested in knowing. And of course, once you get the report and have time to digest it, that might make more sense too.
Well, I think this data is so important. And so definitely thanks to Josie and her team for this. Nonprofits really are the community fabric in our state. We're taking care of people, we're taking care of each other. No disrespect to ConAgra, but we're not just putting hot dogs in boxes. We are really critical to the life and quality of life that we have. And so we will definitely, once we have the final report, we'll send out an electronic link to everybody um, and take it from there. Any other questions? Well, if you think of any, let me know. We'll share with Josie and see if we can get you those answers. Um, and we're just really excited. We have another partnership with the CPAR coming up. They are helping with the salary and benefit survey this year. So we're really excited to build on our partnership with UNO. In fact, it actually started at UNO years ago and somehow ended up at NAM when whoever was doing it retired, but that's before my time. So again, partnering with UNO on this. Expect as usual, we'll have the survey in the field around St. Patrick's Day and then have a report ready for you, hopefully late May to early June. So those of you that have a July 1 start date, we can get you that report or you can email me for an advance copy. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Robert Patterson. Yep, always. Deb, we'll get it to you as soon as we're waiting for some edits from our sponsor. And so as soon as we get those edits, I'm going to wait for them because they paid for the report and I'm going to ask them for more money. So we want to make sure we get that done right. So, um, Josie, you're welcome to hang around for the rest of our meeting or we'll let you get onto our day. I walk next door for lunch and it feels like spring out there. So it's super nice.
Thank you all so much. I hope to be in touch soon.
Thanks, Josie. Take care. So yeah, long time coming.